The first letter arrived on an ordinary Tuesday morning. It was nestled among bills and advertisements, its paper yellowed and brittle, as if aged decades in mere days. I held the envelope for a long moment, confused by its weightlessness, its air of quiet urgency whispering at the edge of perception. Carefully tearing it open, my fingertips brushing the fragile paper, I unfolded a single sheet covered in looping, elegant handwriting. My handwriting. The breath caught in my throat as I read the date at the top. Yesterday. The words described my morning in unsettling detail, down to the forgotten coffee growing cold on my desk, the gray pigeon perched on my windowsill, and even the faint scent of lavender from the soap I'd chosen on a whim. I lowered the letter, pulse quickening, ears ringing softly as if the air itself had grown taut with expectation. How could this be? Had I written it, somehow forgotten, sleepwalking through reality? I set the letter aside, dismissing it as a strange joke or a bizarre lapse in memory, though a shadow of unease lingered deep within my bones. But the letters continued, each morning bringing another envelope, always dated precisely one day earlier. They narrated my life with frightening precision, down to fleeting thoughts I'd shared with no one, capturing even the flicker of uncertainty I felt upon glancing at my reflection, or the peculiar creak of my floorboards as if someone unseen paced restlessly in my shadow. The letters knew too much. They knew everything. Days blurred together as dread crept into my routine, each envelope heavier than the last, despite their physical weightlessness. The scent of aged paper filled my apartment, blending with the ever-present aroma of coffee and stale rain from the city outside. Nights grew longer, colder, filled with whispers that seemed to drift in from nowhere, and mornings found me red-eyed, hollow, reluctant to face the day's mail. It wasn't until the fifth letter arrived that I realized they contained more than just details of my days. They subtly began to change, offering glimpses into things that hadn't happened, shouldn't happen. And in this newest note, beneath the meticulous descriptions of yesterday's trivialities, lay a single, chilling sentence: "Tomorrow, you'll lose everything." The paper trembled in my hands. My apartment seemed to close around me, walls pressing inward, air thickening like mist. A sudden draft whispered through the room, rustling the stack of letters beside me as though stirred by a passing breath. Something unseen shifted in the corner behind me, the floorboards groaning under its silent weight. I stood frozen, heart racing, as a cold, almost damp sensation brushed the back of my neck, a presence standing impossibly close yet intangible. My eyes darted toward the darkened hallway, ears straining against oppressive silence. I knew then with aching certainty that these letters were not warnings or predictions. They were memories, my memories, written by a version of myself trapped somewhere just beyond reach. And with that realization came another, more terrifying question. What had I done to become trapped in yesterday? Yet even as fear gripped me, another envelope slid silently beneath my apartment door, as if inviting me to discover what I had lost, or what I had yet to lose. The new letter lay motionless by my door, its presence emanating an inexplicable gravity that made the simple act of approaching it feel monumental. I crouched slowly, knees protesting with faint creaks that mingled with the mournful whisper of rain against my window. As I lifted the envelope, my fingertips recoiled slightly at the clammy chill of the paper, as though it had absorbed a dampness deeper and older than the rain outside. The hallway seemed to darken around me, the shadows sharpening at the corners of my vision. The gentle patter of rain had become a rhythmic pulse of apprehension, each droplet tapping relentlessly upon my nerves. Sliding open the envelope revealed a page identical to the others, delicate and thin, as if composed of pressed ashes. Again, my handwriting greeted me, meticulous, neat, and utterly haunting. I read slowly, eyes widening with each sentence, breath hitching painfully in my chest. The words described today with absolute precision. My hesitation before the mailbox, the distant tolling of a church bell I'd barely noticed, even the faint metallic taste of anxiety coating my tongue. But at the end, new words appeared. Today, you must choose. Yesterday waits for no one. My mind spun, heart thrumming unevenly. Choose? Choose what? My future, my past, my reality itself. I stared numbly at the letter, a quiet dread settling over me like a funeral shroud, suffocating and inevitable. The boundaries between memory and prophecy, past and future, were dissolving, leaving me lost in an endless maze of uncertainty. Yet, beneath the confusion, a single truth emerged clear as ice. Whatever force bound me to these letters had offered me an escape, at a cost I feared to imagine. Days had become indistinct and muted, the hours smeared like charcoal sketches blurred by rain. My life was unraveling beneath the weight of knowledge not meant to be held. In those quiet moments of solitude, an awareness prickled at the edges of my senses, whispers drifting softly as though carried by a current of air. My apartment felt alien, subtly altered, like returning home after many years only to find someone had rearranged furniture that hadn't moved at all. Sleep was impossible. Every creak of the old wooden floors beneath the carpeting made my eyes snap open, staring into shadows pooling thicker each night. I would listen to those unseen footsteps, heavy yet intangible, moving deliberately through my rooms, pausing now and then, as if to examine the relics of my past life. Occasionally, a fleeting scent of damp earth and ozone wafted through the apartment, as if a storm brewed silently within these walls, unseen yet profoundly felt. It was then, in the hours before dawn, that I found the courage, or perhaps desperation, to search for answers. Gathering the letters, I spread them across my table, hands trembling. There had to be a pattern, a clue buried beneath the meticulous descriptions. I pored over each line, each word, desperately trying to connect dots that shifted every time I thought I'd grasped them. And there, finally, I noticed something strange. Certain words, when read vertically, formed a hidden sentence, subtle enough to miss, but undeniable once seen. The past claims what the future denies. My pulse quickened, my chest tightening painfully. The words resonated deeply, like an old truth I'd forgotten rather than newly discovered. They carried a weight that hinted at loss, regret, and perhaps redemption, if redemption were even possible. The floorboards behind me groaned deeply, interrupting my thoughts, and the air turned suddenly frigid. A tangible presence loomed close, heavy and sad, and though I dared not turn around, I knew it waited, watching silently. My voice cracked as I whispered into the void behind me, the quiet breaking with each trembling syllable. Who are you? What do you want? Silence. Only the faint hum of my refrigerator and the melancholy dripping of rain answered me. Yet even in the absence of reply, clarity began forming within me, shaping itself into a fragile, desperate purpose. I knew, with an unsettling certainty, that the letters weren't meant merely to torment me. They were guiding me towards something hidden, something buried deep in the lost corridors of yesterday, something I had forgotten, or perhaps chosen to forget. And to reclaim tomorrow, I would have to face whatever truth lay waiting in the darkness of my past. Morning arrived in shades of gray, a pallid dawn bleeding through curtains heavy with the scent of mildew and old rain. Sleep had eluded me entirely, my body exhausted but mind painfully alert, spinning relentlessly through fragments of half-forgotten memories and obscure hints buried in letters that spoke in riddles of yesterday. I stared blankly at the ceiling, tracing invisible cracks in the plaster, hearing the distant murmur of traffic as an indifferent world awoke. ignorant of the unraveling reality hidden within my walls. Today would be different, I promised myself. Today I would confront this encroaching madness. The letters had hinted at something deeper, something vital and long buried in the shadowy corridors of my past. A past I'd once thought safely forgotten, locked away like childhood toys in the attic of memory. But those secrets were stirring now, emerging from places I no longer controlled. As I rose and crossed the cold wooden floor to the desk, a subtle draft brushed my ankle, cool and whisper-soft, as if a sigh had escaped from beneath the floorboards themselves. My fingertips grazed the stack of letters, each page rustling gently under my touch, filling the room with a faint but unmistakable aroma of damp earth and fading ink. I lifted the last envelope once more, studying the cryptic line I'd discovered. The past claims what the future denies. Those words resonated painfully, like a warning echoing through an empty house. A sudden resolve overcame my hesitation. I needed answers, and the only place left to look was inward, into my memories, into places I had consciously avoided for years. I found myself reaching instinctively toward the small wooden box hidden deep within my bedroom closet, the one containing relics of a former life. Photographs, faded journals, postcards from places I no longer recognized. I knelt, feeling the roughness of the carpet imprint upon my knees as I pulled the box free, its hinges protesting with a mournful creak. Inside, the musty odor of time flooded forth, pungent and heavy, layered with the ghostly scent of forgotten lavender sachets and aged paper. My heart quickened as my hands found a bundle of letters, old letters bound with brittle twine, letters I had never dared reread, letters from someone who had vanished from my life without explanation, whose loss had reshaped the very foundations of who I became. Slowly, carefully, I unfolded the first letter, the handwriting delicate and painfully familiar, the ink a faded whisper from years ago. My pulse hammered unevenly in my throat as I read words I'd purposefully forgotten, promises made and broken, dreams shared and discarded. And then I saw it, hidden in plain sight, a phrase I knew intimately now, though it had meant nothing then. The past claims what the future denies. A cold, paralyzing wave swept through me. These weren't just echoes of past love or regret. They were warnings, messages sent across time by someone who knew exactly what I'd become. Someone who knew my choices had created fractures, splinters in reality itself. Someone trying desperately to prevent me from repeating history. A sudden noise jolted me from my reverie, the unmistakable groan of floorboards shifting beneath the weight of an unseen presence. I turned sharply, breath catching painfully, every nerve alight with raw anticipation. The room around me dimmed unnaturally, shadows coalescing into shapes too human to dismiss, yet too ephemeral to fully see. "You're here, aren't you?" I whispered, my voice barely audible, tinged with both fear and hope. The answer came not as words, but as a sensation, a profound, sorrowful longing that filled the air, thick and palpable, pressing upon my chest like grief. Tears burned in my eyes, unbidden yet unavoidable, as an invisible hand brushed lightly against my shoulder, a touch gentle and achingly familiar. Recognition surged through me, undeniable and devastating. "You've been here all along," I murmured, my heart fracturing under the weight of realization. "You've always been here." And as I knelt there, letters scattered around me like autumn leaves, I knew with a dreadful certainty that my journey was far from over, that I was no longer merely reading letters from yesterday, but actively rewriting my tomorrow. The presence lingered silently, saturating the room with an aching melancholy that pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat beneath the quiet hum of the city outside. My fingertips brushed the letters scattered across the floor, their paper cold now, brittle beneath my touch, and their words heavier still. Memories surged forward in waves, relentless tides washing away my carefully constructed barriers. The invisible figure behind me exhaled softly, and I felt the whisper of that breath glide along my neck. Unbearably familiar, unbearably sad. Tears stung my eyes as understanding pierced the veil of my denial. It was you, impossible yet undeniable. In the stillness, your name broke free from my lips, a soft invocation barely louder than a heartbeat. Anna, saying it aloud for the first time in years, felt like shattering glass within my chest, splinters scattering through my soul. I turned slowly, half expecting to see you standing there, unchanged and forgiving. But only shadows filled the space where you should have been. Yet your presence lingered, enveloping me in memories so vivid they ached. I remembered the fragrance of your hair after rain, the warmth of your laughter, the bitter, hollow silence of your sudden, inexplicable disappearance. For years, I had buried your memory beneath layers of numb routine, believing forgetting would ease the pain. But the past, I understood now, had never truly left. It merely waited patiently for me to confront the truth I had avoided for so long. The letters were not warnings. They were invitations, glimpses into realities shaped by choices made or unmade. I understood the stakes now. If I didn't face this, I would lose myself completely, trapped forever between yesterday and tomorrow, never fully alive in either. Determined, I stood and moved toward the bedroom, each step creaking mournfully beneath my weight, echoing softly as though marking the passage between worlds. I reached beneath the bed, retrieving an old photograph album covered in dust and regret. Its surface felt rough beneath my fingertips, carrying the scent of age and disuse. Gently opening the cover, my heart contracted painfully at images of us, smiling, carefree, oblivious to the fracture soon to follow. My chest tightened, breath shallow as the weight of our lost future pressed down upon me, smothering in its intensity. Then my fingers found something unexpected, an unopened envelope hidden beneath the final photograph. It trembled slightly in my hand, cold radiating outward like frost spreading across a window pane. I opened it with shaking fingers, pulling out a sheet of paper bearing handwriting distinctly yours, delicate yet purposeful. The date at the top froze me where I stood. Tomorrow. My pulse quickened as I read the letter, each word striking deep like a bell tolling in a distant chapel. You must remember to forget. Confusion swirled with dread inside me, paradox wrapped in paradox. Remember what? Forget what? Yet even as I questioned, realization flooded through me with brutal clarity. To reclaim my future, I had to confront the truth I'd locked away, the memory of that terrible day when everything changed. Closing my eyes, I felt the past rise within me, relentless and unforgiving. The wet pavement glistening beneath streetlights, your laughter echoing softly as we crossed the street hand in hand. The sudden blare of tires screeching on wet asphalt. The sickening, helpless moment when I turned, helpless to protect you, helpless to stop what followed. The memory seared through me now, vivid, agonizing, unstoppable. And then, the quiet afterward, a silence that stretched infinitely, punctuated only by the relentless patter of rain, cold as grief itself. I had denied that night for so long, hiding behind deliberate forgetfulness, constructing a false reality in which you'd merely vanished without explanation, a painless lie easier to bear. But now, confronted with truth raw and undeniable, the walls I'd built came crashing down, leaving only shattered remnants of the illusions I'd cherished. My knees buckled, and I sank to the floor, sobs wrenching free, grief finally finding its rightful place. As I surrendered fully to memory, the room shifted subtly around me, shadows withdrawing, the oppressive weight of melancholy lifting slightly, as though my acknowledgement had lessened its hold. I felt your presence brush gently against my skin once more, comforting yet fleeting, like the delicate warmth of sunlight filtering through clouds. It was a farewell, bittersweet and final, accepting and absolving. And within that quiet acceptance, I knew what tomorrow's letter meant. To move forward, I had to truly let go, not just of you, but of the self I had become in your absence. To forge a future not defined by loss, but by acceptance. Tomorrow waited, uncertain yet promising, if I could only find the courage to embrace it. But the past would claim me forever if I faltered now. The decision lay ahead, as daunting as it was necessary. As the lingering warmth of your unseen presence faded gently away, I gathered my strength, prepared at last to face whatever awaited me beyond this final, haunting letter from yesterday. Dawn broke softly through my window, pale tendrils of morning light dissolving the last remnants of shadows from my room. Yet despite the familiar warmth of day, the silence felt fragile, the air humming with unseen tension, the world waiting in breathless anticipation of my choice. The final letter sat untouched upon my desk, patient yet insistent, emanating a quiet urgency I could no longer deny. My heart thrummed unevenly as I approached, each step resonating through the room, echoing softly like a ticking clock, counting down the final seconds to a decision that would define my existence. The paper was ice beneath my fingertips, its surface charged with static, sending faint prickles up my arm. My breathing slowed, deepening deliberately, as if by controlling my breath, I might control fate itself. With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope, unfolding the letter carefully, reverently, the sound of paper rustling unbearably loud in the profound stillness. The familiar handwriting greeted me once more, forming words I had expected yet feared all the same. Now choose, yesterday or tomorrow. The question echoed silently within me, demanding an answer I was terrified to give. My pulse quickened painfully as memories surged forward again, each image vivid, each emotion raw, pulling me toward the familiar agony of the past. Yesterday was Anna. Yesterday was loss and grief and comfort and sorrowful resignation. But tomorrow was unknown, uncertain, a path shrouded in darkness and possibility. Could I face such uncertainty, stripped of the familiar chains of grief I'd grown to accept? Suddenly, the apartment shivered around me, floorboards groaning loudly as if protesting under a heavy, unseen presence. A chill spread quickly through the room, the smell of damp earth mingling sharply with the fresh scent of morning. Cold pressed upon my back, whispering gently, insistently, guiding my attention toward the mirror. My reflection stared back at me, pale and hollow-eyed, but gradually the surface shifted, revealing a shadow behind me. Familiar yet alien, a silhouette crafted of regret and longing. I knew instantly it was you, Anna, not as a ghost, but as an echo, an imprint bound within my refusal to let go. Choose, your presence whispered softly, the air vibrating around me. Choose, or remain forever trapped in yesterday. In that moment, clarity pierced the fog of my indecision. I understood the cost of my denial, the harm my unwillingness to move forward had inflicted, not only upon myself, but upon the memory of the one I'd loved most. I'd been living half a life, clinging desperately to a past that no longer existed, imprisoning us both within an endless cycle of grief. I choose tomorrow, I said aloud, voice shaking but resolute. The words hung in the air, heavy yet freeing, powerful yet fragile, each syllable severing the invisible threads that had bound me for so long. As my decision echoed outward, the oppressive chill dissipated instantly, replaced by a gentle warmth. Your presence drew near, not to haunt, but to offer a final gesture of forgiveness. I felt your touch one last time, a tender warmth grazing my shoulder, lingering just long enough to reassure me before fading gracefully into memory. Tears filled my eyes, born not of sorrow, but of release, of profound gratitude for the love we had shared, and acceptance for the life I now had to embrace without you. The letters on the table began to fade, ink dissolving slowly into the page like smoke carried away on a gentle breeze, until only blank, aged paper remained. Silence settled gently around me, no longer oppressive but comforting, filled with quiet promise. My journey had changed me profoundly. No longer would I carry loss as a burden, but as a cherished part of my story, one that had shaped, rather than defined, who I was now determined to become. Slowly, purposefully, I moved to the window, opening it wide and breathing deeply the crisp air of a new morning. Sunlight warmed my face, bright and comforting, promising hope and renewal. The city stretched out before me, vibrant and alive, ready to welcome my first tentative steps into a future now unbound by the weight of unresolved grief. And you, dear listener, perhaps you too have found yourself haunted by echoes from your past. If this story has resonated with you, offering comfort or clarity, please consider liking this video and subscribing to WhisperTales, your nightly escape into anxious calm. After all, sometimes the stories we hear help us rewrite our own.